to Talking Tropes.
When I was 10 years old, I had a box. It was filled with something. I don't know. It was a mystery. And, mystery boxes, it's like everything. It's like birthdays, holidays. It's a mystery box. You don't know what you're gonna get in your present. It's Forrest Gump. Life is like a box of chocolates. It's a mystery box. It's crazy. Everything. It's story. Mystery.
Right.
Magic.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah, and the mystery box over there is David, and today we're talking about mystery boxes, and specifically J.J. Abrams and his use of mystery boxes in writing. David, do you want to tell us what a mystery box actually is?
What is a mystery box? A mystery box is a storytelling device. It was coined as a term by J.J. Abrams in a TED Talk that he gave once, where he describes it as basically being all of the intrigue of the story is in the mystery, because that's where your imagination gets to take over for you. And so he compares it to like not showing the shark in Jaws, or just having any mystery in your story is equivalent to like having the story be the whatever the viewer's imagination wants it to be.
Yeah, that's a pretty succinct definition, I would say.
And you can see how JJ, he does incorporate into a lot of his stories. Not all of them, but you can definitely see examples of them throughout. And J.J. Abrams as like a figure, people describe him as multi-hyphenated, but I'd say mainly we all know him as an executive producer. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. What do you mean by multi-hyphenated? I don't think I've ever heard that before.
It just means he's a writer, director, producer, etc.
Oh, okay. Got it. The more you know, kids. He's a guy who likes coming up with broad story stroke ideas.
Yeah, and getting together people,
yes.
and, recognizing talent and discovering, unseen talent.
Yeah.
He's a big fan of diversity and, like, drawing from a lot of unique sources. And he likes revitalizing old properties with his own little twist.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like he's one of the few people who's, like, executive produced a book.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a thing.
Like, I mean, it is a little bit as someone from inside the industry. Like, there are definitely people who, like, are ghostwriters or, have an idea for a book and then farm out the actual process of writing to other people. But, like James Patterson does a lot of that.
Sure. But, I mean, even the idea of having a collaborative book where one person's writing one aspect of it, and then you're writing in the margins. That's pretty unique.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, God, I think in like 2011, 2012, something like that, J.J. Abrams released this book called S. It was a book that it has like all this stuff and like detritus like stuck in it, and like scribblings in the margins, and it's a mystery of trying to solve this book and figure out like where it came from, and is it reality or is it a metaphor, or like what's going on, and these two people have never met face to face, only in the margins of this book, and like it's very engaging. But the problem was I put it down at one point and then forgot about it for 2 months, and then I've just never gone back and finished it. Because it's a hard book to, like, re-jump into the middle of. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like watching a TV show where you dedicate a large portion of time to it. But if you, stop, it's kind of hard to pick it back up. And I think that happened with a lot of people, especially with Lost. Do you want to talk about Lost first, or do you want to sort of put it in the mystery box for a little bit?
Well, like, let's talk about the mystery box a little bit, because I feel like even though I didn't finish it, this book at least definitely employs the mystery box technique, where it literally is it's a book that literally comes in a box and has mysterious surprises within it. Like, I don't know if you can get more literal than that.
Well, you can, because he actually released a physical mystery box as well, with like
That's true.
playing cards in it or something.
As far as if you're not just releasing a literal box, this is pretty much as close as it gets. And you know, like, it works. Like, the idea of the mystery box is not, I don't think it's inherently flawed, you know?
No, I mean, if anything, it's really more basic than people make it out to be. I mean, the idea of dramatic questions, especially in television, I mean, that's all television is dramatic questions. And when a dramatic question is about to be resolved, you usually cut away to a B or C plot. It's because you want to maintain that suspense as long as possible. That's why TV shows usually end on a cliffhanger. Seasons often end on cliffhangers. And people have a lot of anger at series finales. We're definitely seeing that recently.
Yeah, tension. I feel like mysteries create tension. And there's something driving us forward. And even in shows where it can be pretty episodic, there's this like larger question that remains unanswered that you know, like, we'll get one answer, but then two new questions based on that answer, which is very, very
You never want to
Abrams.
reduce the amount of tension or drama by answering a question too easily.
Correct.
Unless there's a much bigger question that you're much more interested in solving.
Right. And so, I mean, I think in this book, you start to uncover, like, a conspiracy. A lot of these involve conspiracies and, like, conspiracy plots. It's very much there's someone else in control who has more information than you, who's really pulling the strings, and I think that's a part of S, it's a part of Fringe, it's a part of Lost, you know, like, it's part of Alias. Yeah. Like, it's a part of so many of his works. I don't know, it's just ubiquitous.
Right. And I think, you know, what people usually criticize JJ for, in particular with the way that he does mysteries, is they say things like, well, he doesn't even know where it's going. Which, first of all, I mean, I think that the philosophical implications of that are staggering. Like, so, like, as a writer, are you supposed to know every single thing that's going to happen in your story when you start writing it? Are you supposed to know how it ends? Or are you sort of discovering things along with your characters? And then, you know, the sort of word of God aspect to it, where the author is supposed to be the keeper of the secrets and, you know, has to be kind of, you know, sly with that and be like, oh, I know where it's going, but you don't. Like, you know, all of the readers now and all the viewers now are coming up with fan theories constantly. And so it's only natural for writers to react to that and to adjust what they're doing based on the fan theories.
I mean, yes and no. Like, I was with you up until the fan theories stuff. Like I totally agree that a writer, especially a TV writer, where, you know, you're not sure how many seasons you're gonna have, like how many episodes you're gonna get. Like, I don't think you should necessarily know how the story is gonna end. Like, I feel like a show that got into trouble by knowing how it was gonna end, quote unquote, was like How I Met Your Mother. Where it like stuck to this ending that felt really out of place with like all of the character development that had been done in the past like 9-10 seasons, whatever it was.
Right.
So, you know, like, I don't think it's wrong. Like, in the like novel writing community, there's a term called plotting or pantsing, where do you sit down and plot out your entire novel, or do you write by the seat of your pants? And like, it's acknowledged that both are valid ways to write a story, you know? And like, that's why in TV you're in a writer's room usually, where it's not just you, there's other people there to bounce these ideas off of and to have input. And so it's collaborative. It's not just you sitting there going, well, I don't know what happens next. It's you and a bunch of people trying to figure that out together.
Right. And yeah, so the question being like, when JJ, you know, puts a little clue in the mystery box book, does he know exactly where it's going to resolve? Do you get that sense from the book, or do you feel like that's more pantsing?
I don't know. In the book, I see, this is the thing. He's really good at making all of his clues seem like they all mean something.
Right.
But then, and I don't know if this is because he rarely writes endings. Like, that's something that we've sort of discovered through this little
Yeah, at least for his television writing credits. I mean, he's an executive producer on all these, so he certainly has a hand in the later seasons as well.
right.
But as far as what he actually, puts
Has
his
the
name
writing
on the
credit.
script for,
Yeah.
right? For whatever value that has for you as a writer, he has never written a season or a series finale, rather.
Right.
For any of his shows. Not Fringe, not Lost, not Alias, not Felicity even. Which just seems strange to me.
It's really interesting. Like, usually season openers, mid-season finales, and finales are usually there are writing credits to the either show creator or head writer.
Unless you're like Shonda Rhimes and like your job is just to create 6 shows at once.
Right.
And they're meant to run, in perpetuity.
Right.
Which, that's a Shonda thing. But, JJ, all of his shows end, but they just don't end with him in a really hands-on role for the end.
And they don't seem to end well.
Okay.
Like, I don't know.
Let's jump into it.
Yeah. People get pretty upset at the endings to a lot of his TV shows.
But what is it that creates that anger? That's what I'm interested in figuring out today. Is like, where does the anger come from?
I think it's because...
Where's the anger come from?
Because here's the thing. When you have a mystery that's so open-ended that people can have limitless possibilities and they have time, like so much time to come up with them, like literal years to sit there and think about it, like they're gonna come up with some pretty crazy wild things that like maybe you've just like never even thought about or never considered. Like, fan theories can be great, sure.
Right. So we're talking about fan theories. So let's circle back to that point. Why do fan theories, why shouldn't they affect the writer? Or why should or shouldn't they?
Here's the thing. I don't think writers necessarily need to be influenced by them, whereas like, I don't think a writer has to like
by need to be, do you mean like they should be able to avoid it, or like they can or they can't just based on their own proclivities?
I think as a creator, it's entirely possible to avoid like fan theories about your work.
How do you avoid it if people are tweeting at you all, day in and day out, and they'll ask you about it at panels, and they'll ask you, in interviews.
That's true.
They're constantly like feeding it in like just this giant loop, and they get around.
It's true.
They get clicks.
So I guess you can't really avoid it. I'm going to talk about Westworld really quickly, which,
okay.
I don't believe JJ, does he have any
He's executive produced.
He executive produced it. He doesn't have any writing credits on it. It was another JJ Abrams idea. Based off of an old movie.
Yeah, well, I don't think it was his idea either. Somebody pitched it to him and he was like, brilliant, I'll get together some people.
Okay. But it suffers from a lot of the same issues that his other shows suffer from, which is interesting to me because maybe he's just bad at picking people to be on his team. Like maybe that's what the problem is.
Or maybe writers write to what they know JJ likes.
Yeah,
which I think is typically what an executive producer is in terms of vision.
Well, so
especially when they're a name.
I'll say this, like season 1, there are a ton of mysteries that you don't have the answers to. But the majority of them are answered at the end of season 1. We sort of are caught up with everything. But there was a really active subreddit during season 1 that sort of guessed the big twist that happened. So, there was a certain segment of the internet, of the fandom, that knew what the big season 1 Westworld twist was. So the writers going into season 2 were like, Huh, you guessed that one? Well, we'll make the season 2 twist impossible to guess. And so they just wrote incoherent, like, garbage that was, like, impossible to follow for a casual viewer, just so that they could stymie, like, 100 people in a subreddit, you know?
Well, this is the criticism that is always lobbed at all of these shows, and I'm not caught up on Westworld season 2,
It's
but
not good.
well, it's beside the point, because I usually find myself disagreeing with these large groups of people saying, they're just trying to subvert expectations, or, they just got thrown off by the fan theories, because I think really, like, when you get down to the nitty-gritty of the stories, they still follow a dramatic logic, but, like, being, like, unexpected requires adding in a lot of excess detail, and they trust, like, J.J. Abrams' thing is also that he really trusts his audience a lot. He doesn't feel the need to spoon feed them stuff.
Maybe too much.
So people are just confused, you're saying? Like, people are just baffled and they don't understand it?
Maybe. I mean, here's the problem with season 2 is that, like, it was all told, like, out of order with multiple timelines, and, like, there were, like, tiny,
Right.
like, literally the tiniest of hints, like, what was going on when, and, like, who was, because, like, the whole thing with Westworld is they're, like, people, robots, androids that are
Yeah.
basically humans, but, like, who's a robot and who's not, and is there another version of the robot, and are they actually in control of themselves, or is someone in control of that? Like, there's all these questions that seem to matter a lot in season 1. Like season 2 has failings beyond just its sort of dramatic
Right.
incoherence, but it really was like a direct response. Like, this, I'm pretty sure the creators or the writers have, like, straight up said, like, we didn't want anyone to guess what was going to happen in season 2, which is, like,
right, but you do want to surprise your audience. I mean, it's just
totally
no good to
but
deliver exactly what your audience is already expecting.
But here's the thing. Like, those 50 to 100 whatever people on that subreddit, like, they might be your most invested fans, but they're not the majority of your fans. Like that's the thing with so many of these creators, is that they think the loudest people are the speak for the majority. They're just the people who are the most dedicated, and, like, you should want those people to figure shit out.
Well, no, I don't know if that's even true.
I don't know. Really?
You don't want people to figure shit out. You don't
Oh.
want, like, it's fine if some people figure out your shit,
People
but, like,
figure out mysteries all the time. Like, some people read mysteries just to figure them out before the book ends. Some people are just really good at that, Like, there's nothing wrong with writing a coherent enough mystery that someone is able to solve it. Like, there are still plenty of ways that you can surprise and delight your audience that don't come from having, like, a weird twist that sometimes it's really validating to have your, like, guess be correct, like, you get a thrill from that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with writing something that people guess, but I'm saying there's also nothing wrong with writing something unexpected. And in fact, there is an inherent value to writing something unexpected and subverting expectations, provided that it fits with the narrative, the logic of the drama, and the logic of the characters. And so,
but I think that's often where it goes astray, where they care more about the surprising drama than they do about those other factors.
Well, do you want to talk about Last Jedi? Did you watch Last Jedi?
I did watch Last Jedi. We can talk about that.
Let's talk about Last Jedi, because this movie had a hugely split reaction, where critics, like, adored it, and the fans, or, the loudest voices from my, as I'm going to characterize them, like, talked about how it was completely disappointing. It ruined the canon. People started a petition to strike it from the canon entirely. And, like, people got so mad. And, J.J. Abrams executive produced this one, but he set up the mystery boxes in the first one, in Force Awakens. So how do you feel about the mysteries in that? Who is Snoke? What are Rey's, who are Rey's parents? who is the last Jedi, etc.
Yeah. I mean, so like the world is split on The Last Jedi, and so am I. Like, there's a lot in it that I liked, and there's a lot that I didn't like.
Right, I'm talking specifically about these 3 major mystery boxes.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, I didn't really care about those going into this, Like, I wasn't looking... One, I didn't think they would be answered in this movie. I figured they would be saved until the last one, So I wasn't like even prepared.
Right, but they at least have to receive development. So you like the mystery, even if the mystery isn't solved, it usually progresses in some way by the following movie in a trilogy.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know. So I mean, it's been a hot second since I watched. So like, I forget Snoke's identity, but Rey's parentage is just like they're nobodies, right? Like that's the spoiler.
Right. So what people got mad about was they were like, well, Snoke just ends up being Snoke. He didn't have, he wasn't somebody else disguised as Snoke, or he didn't have a relationship with any of the other characters that we didn't know about.
Right.
Rey's parents ended up being smugglers with no real identity of their own, and the Last Jedi ends up being Rey, sort of, except for there are going to be other Jedis as well.
Yeah,
and that was disturbing for a lot of fans for reasons that are kind of inexplicable to me, because all 3 of these twists seem like they create new narrative dimensions for the story.
I mean, I like them. I mean, I think it's fine because to me it deconstructs some of the Star Wars mythos.
Yeah, the idea that somebody who's a Force user has to be from a special dynasty.
Right, or that, like, especially the dynastic quality I feel like is set up with the prequel movies even more so.
Right.
Where, like,
where
it's all inevitable.
Immaculately conceived magic Force user man. And then he passes it on to his kids.
Well, and like he builds like C-3PO and new R2-D2. Like everything's gotta connect and come back around, and like, hey, wink wink, nudge nudge, look at this, fans. Like I've never particularly liked that sort of like fan pandering. Like it always just feels like kind of cringy to me, which is why I don't particularly like it in like things like Korra. Korra tends to do a lot of that for Avatar.
Check out our Avatar The Last Korra going up bi-weekly.
Yeah, they're great. But like, yeah, so I don't know, like having them just sort of be their own person, I feel like deconstructs this like dynastic quality that Star Wars has. And I think that's important. Like, fascism comes from wherever. Heroes can come from wherever.
Right. And likewise, I think, Snoke turning out to be nobody, it subverts your expectation. Yeah, fascism can come from a different generation than you might think it does. It's not always the spooky guy in the chair. Sometimes the systems in place can survive without that, figurehead.
Right.
And it just ends up being more dramatic that, like, even though they're setting up a potential redemption arc for Kylo Ren, that it doesn't end up working out in this movie. Maybe it will in the next movie, but it's left up for grabs. And this movie sheds some doubt on that he will have a redemption arc, which makes me think,
or should be redeemed.
Right, or should be redeemed, but that just makes me think that he will be redeemed. That I'm just 100% certain that he will be redeemed in the third one.
You think he's just walking a Zuko path?
Yep, this is the Zuko moment where he goes to be with his father instead, but in this case he murders his father figure and then takes his place, which is great. I think that's really interesting and new and different. I haven't really seen it before.
He just likes killing dads.
Yeah, well, don't we all?
Gotta kill our fathers. It's Oedipal.
Right. But I think where people really became familiar with J.J. Abrams initially was Lost. So do you want to jump into Lost or keep that mystery box going a little further?
Let's hold off on Lost and let's talk about Fringe.
We're just going to keep pushing it, guys. This is the joke of the episode.
The joke is we're never going to actually talk about Lost.
Right. So instead of talking about Lost, we're going to talk about Felicity. Did you watch any Felicity?
I didn't watch any Felicity. What is this one?
Felicity was J.J. Abrams' first major project. It was the first TV show that he was showrunner for, and it was just about a girl going to college, having some comedic, situations and some dramas form. And
Is
it
there
was
a mystery box in this one?
very slightly. There is a character named Megan who has a mystery box that she's like a goth girl, and so she says that if Felicity or anyone opens it, they'll be cursed. And then you find out that what's inside are like dolls of all of her friends. So it's like a creepy voodoo situation.
Super creepy.
But they do hold off on that for a good long while as well. But yeah, Felicity, it's very different from his other projects. I don't know if you can really keep it in the same category as like his other like heavily drama and mystery fueled stories. It's also not like a legacy story. It's not very nostalgic the way that like Super 8 is. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of a weird outlier. But it does lead pretty nicely into Alias, because that was pitched as what if Felicity was a spy thriller?
Love that.
Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, because this, very authoritative female spy is oftentimes depicted just as sort of like a relatable college girl. So yeah, I don't know. How much of Alias did you check out?
I only watched the first 2 episodes.
Yeah, so it's that one. It also sets up some mysteries, but largely it's just about the conspiracy element of these secret spies working, in plain sight kind of thing.
Right. Which that's compelling. People love spy shit. Like The Americans is still going, keeps winning shit or something, right? I don't even know.
Well, I don't know if it's still going, but it's definitely won a lot of awards.
It definitely did a lot of stuff. Would you characterize Alias as like nostalgic at all, or is it?
No, I don't think it's that nostalgic. It's more just that this is like more of his streak of trying to like write empowering, strong female character ladies, but they end up just like taking their clothes off a lot.
Classic.
Like in the pilot, you saw like they go in the shower for the dramatic secret reveal scene. And then there was an episode that I saw. It was like one of the last episodes that he wrote for that show, where she's like seducing the guy and like puts on like a silly wig and has a weird fake accent, and she's like, "Oh mein Gott, I forgot my pants."
The sexiest of accents, the German.
I think it was Russian actually, but I don't remember. But I wasn't doing her accent. I was just doing that. She does a silly accent.
Love it.
Maybe she was trying to do like Swedish. For some reason, people think Swedes are sexy.
I guess. Who knows? They're too blonde.
Too blonde.
All right. So, there's some mystery box elements in Alias.
Yeah, there is literally a 2-part episode called The Box. But the main thing is that Alias did not bill itself as big meta-narrative, high concept, whatever. It's basically a procedural.
Right.
So it, much in the same way that Felicity did not invite that kind of ire, because it was just sort of a college comedy drama, and then Alias is just sort of a procedural spy thriller. So it didn't really require any of that mystery box bullshit.
Right.
But then there was Lost, and I think we do have to talk about Lost now.
Well, let's talk about Fringe first. So Fringe is, I think, one of the first like J.J. Abrams things that I actually ever watched. Like, I watched this as like a teenager, and like, holy shit, I was fucking hooked when I started watching this back in...
Yeah, because it was like it was like a sci-fi procedural.
It was sci-fi procedural. It had great characters. It was interesting. The mysteries were really engaging, and like, this is the first time, that I get the true J.J. Abrams formula, it feels like, where,
right.
Answer one question, ask 3 more, like, you would always solve the mystery of the episode, but it would reveal just a little bit more information about the larger conspiracy at play that was very
Exactly.
sci-fi, and
I feel like season 1 was pretty episodic, right? But then it ended up being more
yeah, there were a couple of
season arcs.
I would say, but for the most part it was there are a lot of, especially towards the end of the season, a lot of kind of just like one-offs where they're just dealing with some various strange sci-fi mystery FBI shit. And then and then I would even say for like large parts of season 2 it's pretty similar. But then in season 3 we get like this weird, it's either season 3 or season 4, we get like a weird retcon, and then eventually like we're in an alternate timeline entirely, and like
He loves timelines. He likes the timelines.
he likes timelines and retcons. Star Wars,
Well, Star Trek, really.
not Star Wars, Star Trek.
Yeah. Because it's that more ties into like the nostalgia of it, because he wanted it to not interfere with the canon of the original show while still paying tribute to it in every conceivable way. So he was like,
right.
Yeah, let's do it.
There's also a nice moment, speaking of just like callbacks that he likes to put into his shows. In Fringe, there's a moment where sort of like the chief of the division that investigates all this paranormal shit has to go in before Congress, and they're like, we already shut down the X project, or like basically, yeah, it is like, it's supposed, he says it in a way where it's like, you could, it's the X-Files.
It's the X-Files.
Like it's just straight up claiming like, this is Fringe, it's the fucking spiritual successor to the X-Files, which I mean, the opening.
Which in some ways, yeah.
And like, talk about a show with like a mystery that doesn't really get solved, you know.
But that was always just the point, was that it was playing off of like conspiracy theories.
Right.
I think mythically, like the reason why conspiracy theories are such a big part of this is because conspiracy theories are the mysteries that people's brains make when they're completely unoccupied, you know? We just start seeing connections between large events and seeing ourselves as the center of some grand narrative of society.
Yeah.
And so that's where conspiracy theories come from. It's just our inactive brains just making up stories to entertain itself.
Well, and I feel like that's a little bit how he does his mystery boxes.
Exactly.
You know, as he takes a bunch of like unconnected
disparate
things,
elements, and tries to see how the brain makes connections. Yeah.
Right. And like, I don't know. I feel like, have you read anything about like how he reacts to like fan theories or any of that?
It seems like he just sort of tries to ignore them for the most part.
Yeah.
Like he claims that he always has an idea of where the story is going. And I think that's true. I definitely got that impression with Lost. But there's certainly a lot of things that seem to come out of nowhere or seem to get dropped, just in the, that's the nature of television writing, because you're writing with a bunch of writers who don't all get to direct the story.
But I feel like that's even more so the job of a producer or a showrunner than to
make sure every single detail comes back in the finale?
No. But it doesn't need to come back in the finale. Again, this is why I'm saying, like, the longer you go, the more in danger I think you are of falling into a disappointment trap. But, like, I feel like that should be someone on the production's job, is to make sure that all of these things, that there is connection, that there is a flowing arc, that, like, everything's generally trending in the right direction. Whether or not you know where that direction ends up, you want it to be consistent, you know?
Right. Well, I mean, was there an example in Fringe where you felt that wasn't the case?
Well, I mean, it's hard because there's like a whole fucking retcon season where everything we know about these characters is basically like thrown out the window.
Sure.
Which just feels like such a betrayal, but we can talk about retcons at different time. Okay, so in Fringe, there's these bald, besuited men called the Observers.
Yeah.
And at first we think there's only one, and then we find out there's more than one of them, and, we're not sure if they're the good guys, if they're the bad guys, what they know, what they don't know, like, what they're trying to do, what their purpose is, and then we find out that like they've basically been trying to ensure the world ends up in like this weird dystopia where they're the ruling class at the end of it. But like there's a whole bunch of shit that like this character says earlier seasons that like don't really match up with like that ending.
Yeah, did you write down any of them?
Like I didn't, but like go back and watch it.
All
right. like there's just definitely some moments where these things like cuz you know, it's vague. They say vague things that could be taken in kind of any direction.
Sure.
But like there are certain things where at a certain point you're like, I don't feel like apocalyptic genocide was really the direction this was going. You know?
It's possible that these things don't hold up as much on rewatch, but just due to the nature of like, you forget about certain details, or certain details get resolved and then you move on because there's more pressing matters at hand. You know, it doesn't. I feel like it doesn't all need to tie together, and that's something. We're finally gonna do it. Let's finally get into Lost. Can we get into Lost?
All right, let's talk about Lost. So, full disclosure, neither of us had watched a single episode of Lost before this episode.
Right, so all I had was like the cultural milieu of like what Lost is, and you know, understanding that it's this religious allegory on an island with sci-fi elements, and there's a mystery, and it didn't resolve well according to the fans. But I watched, you know, almost all of the first season and the finale, and a lot of episodes sort of interspersed in between to sort of get a sense of the grand scope of the story. And I read a lot of Wikipedia articles to fill in the rest of the gaps. I think that the ending makes a lot of sense. Did you watch the finale?
I watched the finale, but I also only watched 3 episodes before that. So
there's a lot of stuff in between.
There was a lot of stuff in between that I feel like I missed, so I can't super speak to it. But yeah, it's like very clear that it's like a religious allegory, like from the beginning.
Right.
You know?
But what makes it interesting, this whole thing, is that there's all of these red herrings and false leads like in between that make you think that, well, wait, maybe there's like a scientific explanation for everything, or wait, maybe they're all dead the entire time, or wait, maybe you know, this is all like someone's dream or in someone's head, or it's a potential timeline.
Like fate elsewhere.
Yeah, maybe this is Langoliers and we're in the in-between times. We're in between one second and the next or something. Like,
right.
You just never know exactly what's going on. But, like, when it all boils down, the fact is a lot of the things that happen were probably, like, hallucinations. A lot of the things that happened were probably because of, you know, this company going to the island to experiment on its electromagnetic properties. A lot of the stuff is just like people acting the way that people do, and you just don't know their motivations until closer to the end of the movie or of the show. And then all in all, it's all based on, you know, there is a supernatural religious element, which is that the island contains an unstoppable evil that threatens to destroy mankind, and the protector of the island is like an immortal figure who just tries to come up with contrived ways of keeping that evil trapped on the island. And that's the story.
It's pretty mythic.
It's fucking mythic, man, and that's why I like it. I like the mythic
shit.
But
I think it's all the in-between shit. Like this is where I think a lot of the fan outrage comes from, is this like, and I think it's where like my frustrations with like Fringe come from. Where it's like there's all this character investment, and then you find out that everything we just experienced with them like wasn't real, or like doesn't actually matter.
But that's the thing, is all of it was real. That's the real meaning of the finale. Is so for those of you who don't know, in the last season of the show, there's this massive event where they split the timeline by like blowing up this thing with like a nuclear bomb, and it splits the timeline so that in one version of reality it seems like they never crashed on the island at all, and in another version they're just still stuck there and have to like figure it out. But what it ends up being is that the split timeline is actually not happening concurrently with them. It's actually like the afterlife. But there's also still real life on the island. So everyone who was theorizing that the island was like all a dream or that the island was purgatory or something, they actually got it backwards. It turned out real life was purgatory the whole time.
Gotcha.
Which I think is hilarious and great, and a great subversion of expectations. But yeah, everybody who dies on the island really dies on the island. Everybody who lives on the island and gains immortal superpowers really is there. All the polar bears were real. The smoke monster, real. Like, there was nothing about it that wasn't real. I think what people were actually hoping for was to find out that it was all fake or something. And that was their frustration, was they found out that, oh, the explanation for a lot of these things was just that it was all a plan by a mythic godlike figure.
Maybe that's just disappointing.
Why is that disappointing though? This is the thing, is like, I'm not like people. So I have weird opinions about these things. So I really like stories where there's this, element of historicity to all the events, where it all dates back to this one single choice that was made in the past. There's this character Jason, who is Jacob, who is the god of the island, and then his brother, the man in the black shirt, literally doesn't get a name because he's just bad Jacob. And like everything dates back to this one event where this woman played by Allison Janney, of all people, murders these twins' mother and raises them as her own children, because she hates outsiders, people who didn't already live on the island. And then spends the entire time trying to convince her children that the outsiders are evil. And so all the like plot elements are because Jacob is trying to bring outsiders to the island to sort of try and figure out if they can truly be good without his help. And so that's all the tests.
All a test.
Yeah. So maybe people don't like that it's all a test. I don't know. But like the whole story, it's just it's a treatise on human behavior.
Definitely. I mean, I think just going back to like people's frustrations and like disappointments with shows like this is that just like the longer they go on and the more plot elements there are to sort of juggle around, the more theories that people are going to throw out there. And like, I don't know, like the larger... It becomes harder and harder to wrap everything up in a satisfying manner, or maybe in a manner that's satisfying to everyone. Like there are going to be some people.
Right. But like, I think that's really the problem, is people just need to chill. I mean, I know that's like a bad critical take, but like, I just don't understand what people are mad about. That it's not going to wrap up in exactly the way that you envisioned it. I mean, if I was writing, Star Wars The Last Jedi, I would have had Rey join up with Kylo Ren and them rule the galaxy as boyfriend and girlfriend. But that's me. That's my aesthetic. Fiction. Yeah. But that's why we have fan fiction. Like, I don't understand, like, how can you be mad at canon? It's fucking canon. It just is what it is.
Because you're allowed to have emotional reactions to things, like you're allowed to be disappointed.
Oh, and you absolutely should. But why would you have emotional reactions to the writing? Like, because all of these takes,
because it's not satisfying. You feel unsatisfied and you don't know why, and so you try to figure it out by ranting on the internet for 10 hours.
But it always seems like at the core of it is all of these people are becoming aware that like they're being shockingly revealed to them that these are written by people, and they assumed that they were written by the cosmic majesty of space or something, by some invisible canon writer.
Well, because I mean, here's the thing, I feel like that's how people feel about a lot of fictional works. Like, they think about Shakespeare and they don't really think about a guy sitting there writing these works. They're like, it's Shakespeare, like dictated to him by God, and like like they have these heroic and like all
Villainous.
consuming. Yeah, they have these mythic figures of writers and creators, and sit down and ask any writer and they'll say, God, you should have seen my first draft. Like, it looked nothing like this. Like, there's a reason people revise, and I feel like in television it's harder to, like, you get fewer chances to do that potentially than if you're sitting and writing a novel.
My brain, right. My brain always goes back to, and maybe this is a dumb place to go back to, because it is so niche, and a lot of people would not call this great writing, but Teen Titans, right? Slade. Everybody remembers the Slade arc because he had a mask, and people just kept saying, "Who is Slade? Who are you, Slade?" And he was just a guy in a mask. And every time you would take the mask off of him, it would turn out he's either a robot or a skeleton. So,
Right.
like, it wasn't good writing, but it was just a mystery, and it kept you invested. And I feel like that's what JJ does all the time. Why is there a polar bear
Yeah,
there?
but
Why is there a polar bear?
oh, it's totally what he does. It's totally what he does. But like Teen Titans seasons were not as long as like Lost seasons.
Sure, yeah, it's not as much literal screen time, but like the
Yeah.
point is, you can drag out that mystery pretty much forever without having to add to it at all, because the answer to the question "Who is Slade?" is that his name is Slade and his last name is Wilson. Like, it's not a mystery. It's not a real mystery, but it just
Right.
is a mystery because you say it is one. It's a mystery
Right.
why there's a polar bear there. Well, it turns out they just had polar bears there because they needed
Yeah.
them for
I
experiments.
I mean, it's a sort of thing where I think that if you have a mystery like that, it's fine not to have a conclusion, but I think you need to just commit to not having a conclusion to it.
Is that what it is? You
Like,
have to just forget. But people want a resolution of some
I
kind.
mean, you can give people a resolution without answering a question, I think, where it's like,
So, like, what would the resolution be to who Ray's parents are if you don't tell us they were nobodies? Like, that's a resolution.
oh no, I agree. I think that is a resolution. I like that.
Okay, so
I
what do
like I
you
don't
do
think
about polar bears? How do you end the polar bear saga?
well, here's an example of a non-resolution. The end of Inception, which people fight about all the fucking time, is like, is he still in the dream? Is he not? It's left ambiguous, and I think that's fine. Like, that's part of what I enjoy about that movie, is that it's left ambiguous. And yeah, you can go back and troll through the movie 80,000 times looking for the clues that tell you if they're still in the dream or not or whatever. But like, it's not about that.
Right. And it's the same with the end of Lost, where you know that everyone in, like, who landed in LAX at the end is dead. You know that they're all dead, but you don't know when each person individually died. So, like, for example, like Hurley, we know survives long after everybody else because he becomes the new Jacob. Um, and Jack dies in the light room where there's light. The light room. You remember. There was
The
light there.
light room. It's very
Yeah, so,
literal.
like, everyone's dying at different times and they are all passing on together. And, like, Christian Shepherd. Maybe the reason people just got turned off by Lost was just the names. Christian Shepherd, John Locke. One guy's name is Sawyer and he's a con man. Tom
Hmm.
Sawyer. Like
Sawyer.
it's
Yeah, with the southern accent.
it's not it's not
It's
subtle.
not complicated. That's the thing. It's like nothing about Lost is subtle, and so people are like, but maybe it secretly is. And then it wasn't, and they were mad about it.
But why would it be?
But like, exactly.
Like when the answer to what is the smoke monster is that it's a smoke monster, it's evil, and it's trying to kill you. Like, why is that not a satisfying answer for people?
Because people drove themselves into a tizzy and came up with like 30,000 different things that it could be, and then when it's the obvious thing, they're like, they feel stupid. That's what it is. It's people just feel stupid.
Right. So I just feel like telling them, well, yes, correct, you are stupid, and I hate you.
Well, no, it's not that you're not stupid.
Like, I hate fans. I hate fans.
I don't think they're stupid. I think, but I think they have to realize that it's okay to just have a simple explanation for things. Like, not everything needs to be the fucking Da Vinci Code, but even the Da Vinci Code is pretty fucking obvious to a lot of people, you know? Like, I was surprised, but I'm not great with mysteries. Like, you know?
I really liked Gravity Falls, which was a mystery show for little kids. And everybody on the internet guessed the ending to that one.
Yeah, that one had a little mystery box.
But it was still satisfying. So I guess you don't have to surprise. But there was, like, they left clues because they wanted the audience to solve it. Whereas, I guess in Lost, they didn't really want people to solve it. Right. They just wanted people to keep watching.
And I think that's the same thing with, like, Westworld. And, you know, it's a little bit the same thing with Fringe, though, again, that had answers. It was just alternate timeline, bizarre character crap.
Well, we know that J.J. Abrams is writing the next Star Wars, and that one is going to have an ending. So
his first ending, guys.
Not his very first.
Sort of.
I mean, he's written endings to movies before that did not get sequels. But, I mean, this is an ending to a trilogy with millions of dollars behind it. And it's certainly going to be interesting to see what he does with it.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. We'll see.
And I'm just gonna be over here saying I like mystery boxes. I want them to continue. I think it's not always important what the answer to a given dramatic question is. Dramatic questions are there to keep your attention. They're not there to answer the question.
Sure, I think they're there. I think if you're looking to write a satisfying conclusion, don't necessarily focus on like all of the clues and such that like you've left. Like, yes, incorporate them into whatever the fuck your answer is, but like you don't stress about it.
Don't stress about
just
the clues.
Like worry about the characters. Like that's what people are like really focused on, you know?
Well, you say that, but none of these complaints have been about character consistency, right? They've all been like, well, wait, what, the smoke monster was just like a random monster? Well, wait, so it was all just like God wanted it to happen? That's like a boring explanation for the factual things that happen. No one's talking about character development. No one's talking about character consistency.
That's true. They're not really talking about that in regards to J.J. Abrams.
So I think the fact is just that we as writers value things differently than the fans do, because fans just care about plot and like literal plot details and, you know, like whatever it would be the most logical thing to happen is always what has to happen, instead of just what's the most interesting, what's the most, you know, shocking and fascinating and satisfying.
I was at an author talk recently, and the author writes like middle grade novels, so like stuff for kids like age like 9 to 12. And he was saying, you know, like I've written over like 3,500 pages of this book, like of this series. Like it's there, I've written a lot of shit. Like I don't really remember all of it, but like I'll talk to these middle schoolers like when I go on school visits, and like they'll know every fucking detail, you know? And like to me, the adults who are on like the Game of Thrones subreddit and like, you know, like nitpicking Star Wars movies, like they're those people, but they didn't grow up and like have other interests. It's still just like memorizing details from fiction, which like that's fine, but you also have to understand that like the people who write that, like, you know more than them. You're right. Like, you win. You're quote unquote more prepared than these people sometimes.
Right.
But you go write fan fiction.
But it might not be a plot hole.
Go write some fucking fan fiction, because they've got more important shit to deal with than, like, your annoying opinion. Like, you know.
Right. I agree. Go write something yourself. If you really care about the world, write fan fiction. If you really care about storytelling and logical consistency or whatever your thing is, write your own story. But don't write petitions that J.J. Abrams be stricken from the history books.
Yeah.
I don't agree with this. It needs to stop.
And it's also, it's just, it is a little bit, it's very entitled, you know? Just like,
it's so entitled.
I didn't like this.
You think you're a better writer than these fucking people.
Maybe,
you don't know
maybe
shit.
you fucking are a better writer. But, like, you don't get to just, like, you have to go prove that before you get to remake season 8 of Game of Thrones. You know, you don't get to just write a petition. All right, I feel like we've dived into mystery boxes and JJ.
Please, guys, talk to us. You know, we've only briefly touched on the Game of Thrones thing. Hannah and I have a lot of disagreements about the Game of Thrones thing. So if you want to see us talk about Game of Thrones season 8, you know, give us a little tweet at us at Talking Tropes.
Or comment on Facebook.
If you want to see us do a deeper dive on any of these shows, definitely let us know.
You can also support us on Patreon. And if you do, you get to pick an episode topic. So exciting.
I never know how to end this. But neither does J.J. Abrams.
See you next week.
See you next time. Bye.